That's our question today. Would you prefer to travel forward in time or back? If you had a choice. More people joining, I'll post it again.
Can we take the lottery numbers back?
Seems like there should be a third option here. I don't know what it would be.
Seen that Gary Larson cartoon where it's a bunch of dinosaurs in the background and a lady bending over a washing machine, and the subtitle is it was a bad day for Dr. Henderson's cleaning lady when she mistook his new time machine for a new washing machine. I guess you have to see it.
Well, it's 1 after the hour, so I'll go ahead and kick us off. Okay, so our consensus, we just got one more in favor of time travel in the past. So, but kind of pretty even there. Yeah. So that's interesting. Well, welcome everybody to the present moment where we are at the Claris Connect user group Meetup. And I'm Kate Waldhauser with Portage Bay Solutions, and I will be hosting the meeting today. To let you all know, this meeting is being recorded and we make it available for members of the user group. So if you want to watch a recording or have to leave early, you can catch it later. So we start off with a couple more statistical questions about people's experience with FileMaker and Claris Connect. I'll put the link in there once more. For Mentimeter, if you want to hop on there and put in your vote for how many years you've been using FileMaker. We're just trying to get, capture these same questions each week and get statistics about how the group is changing. Okay. Our next question is, how long have you been using Claris Connect? So the intervals are a little bit different here, as you can see. But again, yeah, trying to get an idea. Cool, some people just starting, some experts. That's awesome. And next question, what is the greatest number of steps you've included in a flow? So Claris Connect flow here. Over 10, 3 to 4, 5 to 6. Cool. Be interesting to see what the absolute longest one is we've seen so far.
That would be good.
And how would you define yourself as a developer? Outside consultant, in-house, citizen, student, hobbyist, or not a developer? Okay, mostly outside consultants. An in-house developer. Great. And just to let you all know, if you have questions about Claris Connect or anything you want to talk about with the group, you can just add it either in the chat in Zoom or in Mentimeter. There's a send a comment button, and you can always type in anything there that you might want to discuss. And with that, I will stop sharing my screen for a second and we'll let everybody introduce themselves. So starting with our list of attendees, Brandon, you want to introduce yourself?
I am Brandon Stanford and I work with Portage Bay as a coordinator, and I'm in Texas, and we'll probably stay muted so you don't hear my rooster.
Hi, Brandon.
Bye.
Hi, I'm Jillian. I'm not really currently a developer, but I try to stay up to date with things. Hopefully some projects will come my way in the future, but right now I pretty much just develop for myself.
Awesome. Hi, Jillian. John Duncan.
Hey, I'm John, and I've been developing FileMaker for over 30 years.
Welcome, John.
Thanks.
John Newhoff.
John Newhoff, Portage Bay Solutions in Seattle. Looking forward to hearing a little more about QuickBooks.
Cool. Mike Ross.
Yeah, Mike Ross. Company's name is Ross Digital LLC. I also do work with beeswax, and I'm working on my first big Claris Connect project, which is a connector to QuickBooks, and there are over 30 steps.
Wow, awesome. Ronnie.
Everyone, I'm Ronnie Rios. I am currently the product owner of Claris Connect at Claris, based off of New York. And I'll probably date myself here. I've been using FileMaker for over 20 years and Connect before it launched. So
That's great. Russell.
Hi, my name is Russell Haney. I've been working with FileMaker for over 15 years. I'm an in-house developer and curious to see how that Claris Connect and QuickBooks works.
Awesome. Xandon.
Hi, my name is Xandon Frogget. I've been a FileMaker developer for over 20 years. I work for Portage Bay as well with John and Kate and Brandon. Great team. And I think I might do a small little piece today on QuickBooks Journal, and just sort of explain some of the problems that I ran into with it.
Thanks, Xandon. Fabio, you just joined.
Hey guys, how are you? So I am Fabio. I'm originally from Italy. I am currently living in New York, and I work with beeswax data tools.
Welcome, Fabio.
Hi.
I think somebody else may have joined. Karen, do you want to introduce yourself?
Hi, I'm Karen Stella. I'm from New York. I've been a developer for a couple of decades.
Awesome. Glad you're here, Karen.
And I want to say hi to Ronnie. Hello.
hi, Karen. It's been a while. It's great to see you.
Okay, Edward, I know your audio wasn't working. Is it fixed? You want to say hi? Or Carlos?
I don't think it's working.
Oh, I hear you.
Oh, it's working? Awesome. I was trying for the past minute to try to get it to work. I'm Edward. I work for the Claris team, and I'm located in the Bay Area.
Awesome. And Carlos? I don't know if he's still here.
I been doing FileMaker for over 17 years. I'm in Miami, Florida, and just here to network with you guys and see what's going on.
Cool. All right. I think I got everybody. If I missed somebody, please introduce yourself. Okay. So going back to our agenda. Welcome. Okay, here's a little tidbit of information. The world of webhooks is wide open. We don't necessarily need to use the built-in actions or triggers if you're using webhooks. And Fabio's presentation last month looked at that when he was talking about EverSign and Claris Connect. So it was really cool. If you didn't watch that, just you can watch the recording, and it was a really cool example of Claris Connect. So I'm going to turn the floor over to Ronnie, who's going to review this. I don't know if it's the last month's or the most recent Claris Connect release notes.
Thanks, Kate. Actually, we'll go over the last two. I missed one here. Let me see if I can figure out how to share stuff in Zoom again. All right, this might work. All right, great. So if just in case you don't know, I'll just review this real quick. You can always go in Claris Connect under the help menu under what's new, and always see what we've been adding new. We put a quick summary here every time we do a major release. So the last two releases in January and February, have really some really interesting items in here. But here from the what's new, we also have links here for the release notes, which have additional information, more details about those. So try to go through these fairly quickly, but and if we have time, go demo a couple of these things. In January, it was really interesting. We launched our first connector in what we call in preview. It was the Mobile Manager. For those of you not familiar, Mobile Manager is a mobile device management software that specializes in Apple devices in the education market. So we launched it as preview. We want to continue doing this, is releasing connectors in a way that's a little bit ahead of the public release, that gives you the opportunity to test things out, but a little bit before what we would consider public release. So really not intended for production, right? But for you to at least start testing things out, give us feedback, and we can tweak things out before we go public. So we did release that one in preview in January. We also added a new action for the Shopify connector. You get list transactions from an order. And we also made a small enhancement to one of the Calendly actions in there. We also removed an action for Twilio connector with the send fax, because Twilio removed that from their API and it's no longer part of their service. Another really interesting feature that we added that actually was brought up here in the meetup a while ago as well, which is the on error step can now provide the full response of the API when an error occurs from the step that failed. So you'll be able to use those in your flows as step data. So you can modify the logic of your flow using that information. I'll show that a little bit if we have time. We also added several links under the help menu. One of the interesting ones is the link to Claris Academy. So if you're not familiar with it, Claris Academy provides education tutorial material. It's all free, and so we had a link in there. There's an entire track in Claris Academy for Claris Connect. So if you haven't tried it, I highly recommend it. In February, then, we actually released 3 new connectors. We released the One Roster connector. One Roster is a specification for exchange of data between applications in the education market. And so standards are really nice. We have this connector allows you to basically interact with almost any software out there, student information system that complies with One Roster. So you'll be able to create flows that gets student information, things about classes, enrollment, and all that fun stuff. And I'll show that in a minute as well. The Mobile Manager went from preview to public, and we also released a SurveyMonkey connector as well. We did some other improvements that were delivered as well in February. One of them is for the send error email notification feature that we released a couple of months ago. When we released it originally, the emails that would get sent out when a flow finished in an error was sent out only to the owner of the project. So we've now modified this so that the email would go out to all the collaborators in that project. What this means, if you have several people working on the same project, everyone will get an email with that notification. Some of you are asking if you might have an email address for an entire group where you want these emails to go to. Since we don't really charge per user in Claris Connect, you can go ahead and create an email or a Claris ID with an email that you want everybody to receive or something like that, and add it to your project and make sure that way that everybody in the organization gets that email. But you can add as many users you want to the project and they will all get that notification. And we also added the ability to rename projects and flows directly from the navigation bar. As a matter of fact, we don't even ask you for the name of a project or flow when you create it, which is pretty nice. So what that means, I'll show that really quickly. So if you're here in your flow view, you can just click here on the top. You can change the name of the project and type in just directly right in there, which is pretty nice. When you create a new project, it won't even ask you, go right in here. It'll be named Untitled, and then you can just modify it from there. Same thing happens with flows. When you create a brand new flow, it won't even ask you for it and ask you for the name. You can go in here and start making changes directly to it. So it's really nice. It's also because when you're creating a new flow, it won't ask you, right? It won't stop you to ask you for the name of the flow. It just goes directly, not interrupting your creative flow, no pun intended, to get you in there and get you creating your automations as quickly as possible. So that's pretty nice. We thought it saves a lot of time, several clicks here for the user. But if I'll take just a couple of minutes just to show a couple of these connectors real quick. The Mosel connector is, like I said, it's an MDM software, really nice. We add a couple of actions here that allow you to retrieve information about the devices that are registered under the MDM. So you have some filters here, but you can get a list of all the devices and their attributes, which is really great. So if you're building a solution that wants to integrate with the MDM, get the inventory of all the devices or get details and things like that, this is a great way to do it without having to learn the API. For Shopify, we added this new action, get list of transactions from an order. If you're using a flow similar to this, where you've got a flow that's being triggered whenever a new order is created, what you're getting back here from this trigger is just getting the ID of the order, but you really don't get all the transactions, all the payments for that order. So if you want to get those, like how it was paid, the amount that it was paid, a different tender, this action allows you to do that. So you get a nice detail of all those things. So this is really great addition to this connector. The other connector that we added was the one roster connector. And like I mentioned earlier, one roster is a specification that allows different applications in the education market work with one another. The great thing about this connector is that this allows you to connect with any SIS, any student information system that supports one roster, and gives you a bunch of actions here. We've got 12 actions. Basically list and details for different objects. So you can get information about the classes and students and teachers and all that fun stuff. So if you need to do an integration between student information system and any other application, maybe FileMaker, then these actions will come very, very handy. As a matter of fact, I've got a little FileMaker app over here that's meant just kind of like a school bus check-in where kids need to get boarded onto the bus. We obviously need the records of the students in here to help them, to kind of check off the list as we load the kids onto the bus. And this flow over here just does that from the app. I'll call it, got a webhook that triggers it, gets the student's information, and then sends it back here with a reply with JSON data. So from this over here, if I just run this script, which is really just calling that webhook, brings in all the data, and you can see here all the students for this class, and all this information was right. It came from that student information system and just populated this really quickly. And from here, I can start checking off the kids as I load them on the bus. So it's a great way to get integration with those kinds of systems very quickly. And again, it works with pretty much any SIS that supports one roster, which is really fantastic. And lastly, I'll just touch base here quickly on the on error. As I mentioned before, now the on error allows you to get the data from the step that send out the error. So if in this case, I run this and it ends in an error, like I'm sure it will right now if I run this, because I on purpose made that step to have an error. What would happen is this information now gets replicated, the information, the response here from the step gets replicated here in the on error, which now becomes available for you to use in any other step. So for example, in this one, I'm able to take the information that's a little bit more detailed than just a 404 from the API and be able to send that over into Slack, which makes for a much better user experience in our flows. So, all right, that's it. I don't want to take too much time. If you have any questions, let me know. Stop sharing here.
Thanks so much, Ronnie. Any questions for Ronnie? I noticed that error capture one, and I was like, I didn't see it in the release notes, but I noticed it immediately or the other day, and I was like, oh, this is working.
Yeah,
it was really great. So I appreciate that one.
Absolutely. See, we listen.
Thank you. All right. Well, thank you so much, Ronnie. And next is going to be Xandon. He's going to give us an overview of some real world experience of working with journal entries in the QuickBooks connector. So take it away, Xandon.
Share my screen here. Okay, so we had a real world interaction with QuickBooks Online that we wanted to do. One of our clients wanted to be able to create journal entries, and he had some very specific requirements about how he wanted to create the journal entries. So our first choice, of course, was to try and do it in Claris Connect, and we were really, really hopeful. And I spent a bit of time playing with it, and I really liked, the things that I liked about it was being able to easily connect to QuickBooks Online, take care of the login, and replicate things that direction. But I ran into a couple of sort of showstoppers, and then ended up having to switch over and use the API manually and then build posts from within FileMaker. So I'm not going to be going into a real deep dive about what I experienced, but what I did want to show was sort of what we were trying to accomplish, and where I ran into sort of a couple of failing points that I wasn't sure how to get around. And so I ended up having to choose a different selection and go with using the API directly. So the first part about getting the journal to work was, of course, connecting to QuickBooks Online. And I hadn't done it before using Claris Connect. And I thought it was going to be super easy because I already had a developer account set up with QuickBooks Online, and I had a couple of sandbox accounts. And so at first I banged my head against the wall. And then I finally found this thread. I banged my head against the wall because I couldn't get it to work. And then I found this thread that said that you can't use the sandbox for connecting with Claris Connect. And I'm not sure if that's been resolved, but it wasn't working for me initially. And that you have to basically set up sign up for a free 30-day free trial and then use that account. So I signed up for a 30-day free trial, and then I linked that to my developer account so then I could test different things from the developer account. I don't know that you need to connect it to a developer account in order to use it and test using the API Explorer, but that seemed a lot easier because I wasn't quite sure exactly what was going on under the hood from Claris Connect when it was interacting with QuickBooks. And I wanted to be able to see how the calls were being made and, of course, adjust them and make sure I wasn't missing anything. So the first one, which was basically to do a test journal where I just wanted to push some information into QuickBooks from FileMaker. I'd give it some data to actually just make a journal entry, a very straightforward journal entry. Here was the test journal workflow that I created. I did a script trigger from FileMaker, in which case I would be passing a JSON object with some variables basically of the line items that I would want on the journal entry, and then went into the actual creation of the journal entry. And this is where I hit my stumbling point. So the script trigger is pretty straightforward. I'm guessing everybody's probably experienced that and is familiar with it. Passing a JSON object to it's really straightforward. But when I went to create the journal entry, that's where I kind of hit some snafu. And it's pretty straightforward for connecting to it. One of the hurdles that I ran into was I was logged in with my developer account, and I kept trying to figure out how to disconnect the sandbox account that I had been trying to connect to, that it was failing to connect to. And I didn't realize that if you're logged in the same browser session, that it's just going to automatically connect. And so I had to log out of QuickBooks, close my browser out, reconnect to Claris Connect, and then log in manually again under the free 30-day trial that I had signed up for. So hopefully that'll help somebody if they're going down this path. If you're running into problems getting authentication, you've got multiple accounts you're dealing with, just quit the browser, close everything out, make sure you're completely logged out of both, log back into Claris Connect, and then delete the existing QuickBooks account that's in there, and then go ahead and add a new one in and follow the authentication process as it prompts you, versus if you're already logged in, it's just going to automatically take that connection and try and use it. And that may or may not be the connection that you want to use. I did find out in order to resolve that, which was this is another one where, so we've got our flow, right? So if I come out here, we've got our QBO flows that we're working on, and we've got our app connections, making sure that I came out to this flows level to remove that QBO account and delete it. So then when I was going to create another flow and reattach it, that it would create another app connection to the correct QBO account that I wanted it to connect to. So then with the actual journal entry, this is where I ran into the next little snafu. And this one sort of was the deal breaker. And I called Kate in on it so we could get a couple eyes on it just to make sure I wasn't missing something. So the journal entries that our client had wanted was if they were in QuickBooks and they came in here, right, they do journal entry, they want to be able to enter in, they, wanted to put a value in, and then they would say, $1,000 here. And then they put in a description of this is a test or whatever, right? Then they'd come to their next line, and this would be, maybe something else, a fee or something. And this would be, 1,000. And then the last one, and I might be out of order on this, accounts payable, and it needs to balance, right? So you have your debits and your credits, and those need to be equal. But they had 3 or 4 or 5 lines. I mean, they could have many different lines that are in here. And this is where I hit a weird snafu. I couldn't figure out, they also wanted a journal number to enter this journal number in. I couldn't figure out how to get this journal number to populate. It would just increment up from whatever the last journal entry number was. But the other one was the multiple lines. And this is what I found, and I might be off on this, so please let me know if somebody's done this and they're familiar with it. But under create journal entry, you have a debit account that you can select from. So I could select just like I had in the other one, I could say accounts payable or accounting fees. I have a class reference and a department reference. These threw me off a little bit for a curve because neither of these are in the QuickBooks Online when you're creating a journal entry. So I wasn't quite sure what those are for. I'm guessing that if you have a list of classes and departments, that you would be able to select from those lists, and then it would link to those, either a class or a department. But as this was a brand new test account, I didn't have any of those set up. So when I went to look at them, there wasn't anything in there.
Xandon,
yeah.
Did you check the API to see if they're required? Well, required's got asterisks on there.
Yeah, so exactly. That was that. Yeah, the API is where I ended up going, and it's not part of the. So that was the other question, is when I started going down the API path, and I'll get to that in just a second. That's when I realized that the API isn't asking if we do journal entry in here, that the journal entry here for creating a journal object, that it's not referenced in there either. And when you actually create a journal object, it's not, the department and the class weren't referenced. And I might be on the wrong one, but yeah, journal object here is create journal entry. So, credit line detail type, basically everything in this JSON object is what's returned. And here's the values that you would pass. So, I had account reference, and you need to have the account ID value. So that was the next sort of phase. So I kind of worked at it backwards, right? I didn't realize that that I needed the account value, but I'll get to that in just a second. So I kind of went about it a little bit backwards. I hit a wall, and then I came and looked at the API. I think if anybody's going to do the QuickBooks thing, definitely connect a developer account, set up an account, test it with the API, so you can get an idea of how the calls are going to be made, because you will need to reference these from, if you're going to reference these in your FileMaker solution, you would need to pass, like, in order to do an opening balance equity journal entry, I need to basically use that. I need to reference that value, that 39, because
it sounds like you actually have to create the journal entry first and then pull it for the ID number, and then you can set the other values.
No, this is the account. So you have accounts.
The account number. Okay.
Yeah, you have to get the account number. So these account numbers that are here in the pull down, right? These have an ID number. So I can't, you can call them by name if you're doing it manually in Claris Connect. So as I select accounting fees or accounts payable AP,
gotcha.
It does it. But the value that you need to pass in the JSON object from FileMaker is the actual ID. So when we go to review and test here, you'll see it automatically it does the lookup and automatically replaces that. So in order to get those account IDs before you could do the journal entry, you actually need to you need to get the account names. And so I built one to get the account names and query by the account ID. So basically I could create a record in my FileMaker solution to get a list of all those accounts. And then I could reference those IDs because those are going to be needed if you're going to pass that data on into QuickBooks. You need to be able to have that key reference. So I'm kind of all over the place on it, but let's get back to the journal entry. So this is just a test. I'd selected an account and it's going to replace it with the account ID for me so I can test it. The class reference and department reference, I'm guessing they're not in the journal entry screen when you're creating them. They do have API references for them, as you can have a class or a department. So I'm imagining if I created in my QuickBooks test account, I created a class here that I would be able to reference that class and it would somehow associate in QuickBooks. And I'm not familiar with how the classes and departments would associate with the journal entry, but I'm guessing that they would be associated with that journal entry in some way. I didn't bother setting those into them, and they're not required. So we have our debit amount and the debit account, the debit amount, our credit account, and then the credit amount. And of course, the debit and the credit amount have to be equal because they have to balance. So this was where the breaking point was. There's only two lines here, right? I'm not able to put in a JSON object that has multiple lines with multiple debits and multiple credits that could then balance out in the journal entry. And so that was where I ran into the sort of snafu where it's like, oh shoot, I'm not going to be able to do this because we needed to be able to do multiple ones of it. So if I review and test it, you'll see I do get my response back where I went ahead and created those two items, those two line items. And if I look at here in my journal entry, and let me cancel this out. And I'm sorry if I'm hopping all over and if you're not familiar with QuickBooks, but you can see it creates it, and it created the two line items and it balanced, 5,000 against 5,000, but that's it. It only puts those two line items in there. And I don't have control over the actual number like I do here for the journal number. So those were the two things that sort of broke it, made it where I couldn't use Claris Connect for this solution. Might be able to use it in others. I really liked the ability to, the authorization was pretty straightforward once I found that I needed to set up a free trial, 30-day free trial in order to use the account. Yeah, so that was my dip into Claris Connect using the journal entry, some of the problems and things that I ran into, what questions that I had. I think if I was going to help somebody with it and wanted to help them, I'd say, make sure you look at the API Explorer with the developer account so you know exactly what the calls are going to do, because they're going to help you a bunch. And that helped also a ton when I realized that I needed to get the accounts and get the account ID, because in here, you actually need to have you need to form the request, the select statement for the query, and that needs to conform with the API as a select statement. So you have to look at the API in order to figure out what this. I mean, this is sort of pretty straightforward SQL query maybe, but it's really helpful to be able to test it in the API Explorer first to know that you have your select statement correct before you then start plugging it into the FileMaker side. So anyway, did anybody have any questions? I didn't get to use it much past that. I ended up switching over to using FileMaker curl and doing posts and gets to gather all the information. And that was pretty straightforward. The hard hurdle there, of course, is the same, getting the authorization to work and then being able to maintain that. But once you have that down, the structure is very similar. You would create a similar workflow in Claris Connect that you would in FileMaker, where you have to get the different pieces, you have to test them for errors and so on and so forth.
A couple of things, and I'm working on a QuickBooks integration right now with the invoicing section of QuickBooks. And a couple of things that I ran across. One is it didn't like when FileMaker had an entry where the user actually had typed in, let's say, $100.00. It didn't like that. You need to convert it to get his number. It'll accept it won't accept .00 as a number. It'll accept .0 as a number or .01, but not 00.
Oh, interesting. And
That's sort of
that's
weird.
that's from FileMaker when you're passing your JSON into Claris.
And QuickBooks rejects it.
Oh, I gotcha. So was that something where you just did JSON number for setting it from FileMaker?
Yes.
Did that correct it?
I just actually took the value and put in get his number, script out the value, whatever was in there.
Oh, okay.
Yeah.
When you built the JSON object, though, you didn't say get it. You still did JSON string. You didn't do JSON number.
Should be JSON number. I'd have to check my code, but it should be JSON number.
Yeah.
The other thing that drove me nuts is that there's no easy dynamic way to put in line items. In the invoicing section, you can in Claris Connect say, hey, here's one line item, here's another item, but you have no way to know if it's dynamic. If you've got 7 line items and one line item and the other, there's no real way to know. And the suggestion is it's just kind of build a block of alternative text and you have multiple line items, but it'd be sure nice to be able to do some sort of a loop to step through those line items easily within. They say it can be done, but I haven't figured out how to do it yet, to be able to loop through line items.
Oh, I see. So like, let's say the invoice had already been created and you're going to create new line items. You have to build it in to check to see if the line item already exists before you add it. And if it doesn't, then add it, kind of thing.
Well, that would be one thing, but just being able to add, you're creating an invoice in QuickBooks from data from FileMaker. If you got 3 line items or 5 line items, there's no way for it to detect how many line items you need to push.
Oh.
So,
interesting.
DB Services has got a QuickBooks tutorial on that, and they sort of warn against this at this point. But it's going to take I'm hoping for maybe some enhancements on this at some point in time.
Yeah.
Luckily for my particular client here, they only have one real service, so they don't have to worry about, various posting the various categories of things within the line items.
Yeah. Oh, that's interesting. So in this example, right, where we've got a sample object that they'd be passing using the API, sorry, you're saying that that the entry screen, let me go ahead and just pull that up so we can take a look at it. So if we pop back out here, I'll go to my test journal. Let me just do another one where we do QuickBooks. And is it under create invoice? Is that where you're doing it?
Yeah, create invoice. And I'll show you.
Were you going to be talking today in the Claris Connect meetup? I don't want to overrun if you were going to be talking about.
I'm not. I wasn't planning to talk.
Okay.
I just wanted to find another QuickBooks victim here.
Yeah. No, that's good.
So see where it says line items?
Yeah.
Okay. You gotta have at least one. And if you hit the plus sign, it'll create another one. And then you can keep creating line items, but that only works if you have a fixed number of line items.
Oh, so how would you tell it how many you're going to create?
Therein lies the rub.
Yeah, that's interesting. So, and it doesn't take a JSON array of objects. Okay, interesting. So what if you do the same, all of the information the same, but do a different line item? Does it, because I know that the way that the other invoice creation that I do for one of our clients is when you're taking a CSV file and you're passing it in, is basically it's a single table, even though you've got multiple line items. Each line item, of course, has redundant information. It's got the customer name, the invoice
Right, I mean,
number,
I
and
can
so
create
forth.
the JSON object with all the line items in it.
Yeah.
But
So if you did it twice, if you did it twice, right, where you did, like, you repeated this step of create invoice, and changed information on the line item, does it add a second line item in to that same invoice, right?
I'm wondering if you did, I don't know. I mean, that would be like doing an update of an existing invoice that you set once. You're saying create the invoice with one line item, step back, and then update the invoice with the second line item. I don't know, that might work.
Well, the only reason I say that is because that's how it works with one of the clients where we're doing invoice creation. Is, basically each line item has the invoice number, and it will just go ahead and append it into the existing invoice. Because this might be, and maybe somebody from Claris could answer this. This might be more for testing when you're building it out, because there's no way to, like, they maybe want to give you the ability to pretend you have an array, but they're not allowing it to take an array of objects. So yeah,
I don't want to interrupt because I want to
please do.
This is but Michael, yeah, that's actually one of the issues I've identified with this connector, and it's exactly that. We need to give you the ability to create those line items in a dynamic way. You provide maybe an array of those line items, and then you can iterate through that and be able to post it there. So I got a couple of solutions for that, but I don't know, Michael, if it would be okay if I reached out to you offline, and then maybe we could discuss it, see if I'm on the right track. But yeah, I know exactly what you're talking about.
Yeah, and it would be the same for the journal entry, right?
Absolutely, yes.
Yeah, because it's just sort of the same sort of repetition. Because that would have been so nice to be able to use Claris for that.
Thanks, Mike.
Yeah.
Ronnie, I put my email address in the chat.
I'm copying it already. And then just since I'm already talking and interrupting you, Xander, the sandbox as well. It's already something that we actually have in our backlog. I don't know when I'll be able to get it out, but that is one of the things that I want to get out, because you're absolutely right. There's no way you're going to want to test this out on a production account, right? You need a test account, and a sandbox is probably the preferred way. There are some difficulties in that, technical difficulties. That's why it isn't there yet, because it's really hard to have a connector to use two different types, two different domains, because the sandbox is exactly the same, but it doesn't reside in the same place where the production version of QuickBooks lives. It's a completely separate domain.
Right. Yeah, your domain. So your authentication and everything is
completely different. So there are some technical difficulties to do that. We're not the only ones to hit that challenge.
Yeah, I think Zapier has that same restriction.
Because it's not easy.
Yeah, that makes sense. And so I had to set up a production environment and just link it to my developer account as a test. And then, and then when we do switch to production, it would, just switch the account over. But go ahead, John.
Oh, I was just gonna say, if it was easier, and you could
everyone would do it.
Two birds with one stone. If it could just be a different connector, and then you could introduce the ability to copy flows, then we could have a dev flow and a production flow, and use the sandbox and the dev flow and switch it to the real one in the production flow. I'd almost say I'd prefer that, because then I'd get copy flows, a copy feature.
Yeah, so it's funny. We went through the exact same exercise when we were talking about this, and I actually vetoed that. And the reason is you might create a very complex flow, right, in your sandbox. So if we have two connectors and you create it using that sandbox connector, now you want to switch over to the production one, you would have to go through the entire flow and change the account on each one of those steps. And that I'd like to avoid that for the users.
Yeah.
I'd still like to be able to copy flows.
Oh yeah, you and me both.
Yeah. Well, and that would be one where at the flow level, I mean, yeah, I'm sure you guys have got this figured out, but when we back out to the flow level, we've got our app connectors. If you change the app connector, it's the same, that it could automatically update the
Wouldn't that-
in all your flows. But
Exactly. Yeah.
that would
I think-
totally break for FileMaker because it might be a completely different FileMaker solution. But for QuickBooks, where it's consistent.
Yep.
Yeah. So
That's exactly my thought, right? Make it easy for
huge
you.
hurdles. Yeah, huge hurdles I can see in there.
Mhm.
So. Cool. Thanks, Ronnie. That's super helpul. That's awesome.
Yeah. Xandon, if I can maybe reach out to you later as well.
Yeah.
Let's chat about this. I appreciate it. This is wonderful.
Ronnie, I put my email address in the chat.
Yep, I already copied it. Thanks, Mike.
Great.
Yeah, I'll do the same.
Yeah, thanks, Xandon.
I think if you're going to cut your teeth on anyone on a troublesome flow, QuickBooks would be the one.
Yeah. The authentication part is the hard part in FileMaker, and that's the easy part in Claris Connect. And that's actually like the biggest hurdle, like when you're trying to implement it in your FileMaker solution. Because you're doing the same workflow, like you still have to make the call to get the different pieces and then build your variables and then pass them around. And whether you're doing it in FileMaker or Claris, it's two of the same thing. But the hardest one in both in FileMaker is to get the QuickBooks API keys and everything entered in, and then have it update your stuff. So having all that taken care of in Claris Connect is super, super helpful.
Yep. Great.
Cool. That's all I had. If anybody had any more questions. I'm sorry, Brandon. I think I went over my 5 to 7 minutes.
That's okay. There was Q&A, so that was the purpose, to be discussed and to be talked about. So that's perfect.
Yeah, thanks so much, Xandon. That was really helpful. So let's see what is next. We did our discussion. Let's see, we're going to now do our show your flow segment. So we're going to get into breakout groups of, I guess, two or three groups here. And people, if you have a flow you're working on or something you're proud of, or just want to, troubleshoot something you're working through, we can discuss it in small groups. And we can be there, 15, 20 minutes, something like that. So I will let Brandon start the groups. Welcome back, everybody. I know some people had to drop out, but thank you all for participating. I hope you had good conversations and learned some more stuff about Claris Connect. And I'm going to share my screen again. We're going to do one last Mentimeter question. Let's see here. Okay, so what connector would you like to see the group discuss further? So we have this kind of marked up, some that are already upcoming. Yeah, some new ones. SurveyMonkey might be interesting, or OneRoster looked interesting to me as well. So if you want to vote through Mentimeter, and hopefully this will work. This wasn't working last week or last month, but
I'll put the link back in the chat again.
Oh, thank you. Looks like it still may not be working.
No,
I'm not sure.
That's weird. I entered one that's coming up, but it takes.
Oh, there we go.
Oh, it was just a link.
OneRoster.
Hey.
Cool. Yeah, that would be fun to take a look at. Shopify, Stripe. I don't think we've done those ones yet. Okay, cool. So yeah, if you want to share, have something related to Claris Connect you want to come and talk about, please let us know through emailing info@portagebay.com or through the Meetup. And we look forward to seeing you all next month.